Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Audit and Governance on the 16th of September 2021. And we've got a number of items on the agenda tonight, and we'll start with minutes of the previous meeting. If I can have somebody move them as a true record of the last meeting.
Happy to move, Chair, if that helps.
People,
progress.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Thurgood, thank you, and all in favour of moving the minutes. Councillor Greatrex, Thurgood, you're happy with moving the minutes? Yep, okay, that's fine. I'll sign those off. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Cooper and Councillor Chesworth. Item 3, declarations of interest, any? No, didn't think there would be. Okay, item 4, review of the annual report on the Treasury Management Service, actual prudential indicators 2021. Stefan Garner can't be with us tonight, and Lynn, I think you take all of his reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the annual report on the Treasury Management Service and the actual prudential indicators for 2021. The report is a statutory requirement and it requires full council approval, and I believe it's going to full council on the 21st of September, and it does demonstrate favourable results for the Treasury Service for the year. Confirm that the authority has complied with the professional codes, statutes and guidance, and there are no issues to report regarding non-compliance with the approved prudential indicators summarised in the appendix. Just a couple of highlights from the report. The Council maintained an average investment balance externally invested of 60.571 million and achieved an average return of 0.62%. The Treasury Management function achieved an outturn investment income of £377,000 compared to the original budget of £332,000. Investment balances were higher than budgeted throughout the year due to the slippage on the capital programme at the beginning of the year, although interest rates did start to fall during the year. We also received £128,000 in dividends from our property investment funds. We were budgeted to receive £300,000 in investment dividends. However, due to the pandemic, investments in property funds were ceased at the beginning of April 2020. Part of the report that's going to Council will include a review on the performance of property funds, which in December members considered that we should no longer continue with our planned investments in property funds. The review has been undertaken, and it is proposed in the report going to Council that we recommend investing the remaining £8 million in property fund investments as planned before March 2022. During the year, we have also complied with all the minimum reporting requirements, where we sent an annual Treasury strategy in advance of the year, which went to Council in February 2020. Mid-year minimum Treasury update report, which went to Council in December 2020, and an annual review following the year end, which is this report now. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody with any questions at all for Lynn? Councillor People.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the investment in property funds, what's the latest report from our fund managers on the existing investments, please?
Right, thank you, Chair. At the moment, we have two investments, one in Schroders and one in Threadneedle Property. Although there was a decline in the actual capital value at the end of last year to the tune of £206,000, this has been recovered to some extent this year, and they're still performing in line with our requirements to actually generate investment income for us during the year. Thank you.
Happy? Any come back with that?
I think it just underlines the point we made, Chair, that if we can sustain this for a long term, it's all right. The difficulty is that we're facing short-term capital loss. So I think that's the balancing act that has to be borne in mind as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously nobody could have foreseen what was coming, so...
Depends a little bit on your view of whether Brexit was going to solve all our problems, Chair.
Okay. Right. Any more questions? No. Okay. In which case, our recommendation then is that we consider the annual report, which we have done on the Treasury Management Service and Actual Prudential Indicators 2021, highlight any proposed changes for recommendation to Cabinet. We haven't any recommendations to put forward, so we're just voting to endorse. I'm happy to move that. Have a seconder?
Chair, just before you move that, I think I'd be right in saying that at this point in the past, Councillor Faulkner would have moved a vote of thanks to the staff for their excellent performance, so perhaps we could do the same.
Yep, well, absolutely.
Just because he's not here doesn't mean we can't do that.
You can take Councillor Faulkner's place and do that from now on, I think.
Well, I'm not sure Councillor Faulkner would think I was an adequate substitute, but in the circumstances I'll deputise in that regard. But I don't think anybody on the committee would disagree that the management's been very, very well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think quite often we do feel it goes without saying, but it's not. We should probably say it, and you are absolutely correct.
Well, I would only bear in mind that, as we know, places like Peterborough and other parts of Staffordshire even have had more financial issues. We've got used to the fact that ours are managed properly and get clean bills of health, and we mustn't forget that that's because the hard work goes in.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm happy to add that on to recommendation. So happy to so move that. And looking for a second. Yep. Okay. Councillor Ford is seconding. And if we can all move that. Yep. That's fine. That's moved. Okay then. On to item 5 then. Local Government Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review 2021. Made for some interesting reading this month, and we're going to go over to Zoe Waliki for this.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report that I've brought to you today is to advise you of the contents of the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Report letter for this year in relation to complaints that have been made against Tamworth Borough Council. As you will be aware that the Ombudsman produces us an annual letter setting out the statistics about the complaints relating to our authority that have been referred to them. The letter this year was published in July and covers that period April 2020 to March 2021. A copy of the full letter is included in the report at Appendix 1, which is page 41 of your report. At the end of March 2020, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Ombudsman paused their work because they recognised the work that the local authorities needed to do, and that was to enable us to concentrate our efforts on vital frontline services. So all the decisions that have been made regarding Tamworth Borough Council can be found on the Ombudsman's website. They have also continued to improve their website, and you can find an interactive map of councils on the link that's provided in the report. So this year, there was 2020-2021, there was 9 inquiries made to the Ombudsman about our authority. They did make 9 reported decisions, 2 of which were from the previous reporting year, leaving a further 2 complaints with unreported decisions to come next year. Appendix 2 gives the full detail on this. In summary, there were 9 complaints. 3 complaints were regarding benefits or tax, 2 for corporate or other services, and 1 each for housing, highways, environmental services. And then there was 1 complaint which did have no reported area. The Ombudsman has continued to improve through the year as well, and they have now introduced a new process. So an assessor looks into a complaint and makes an initial judgment in a way a triage would. They will normally contact us to ascertain if the complainant has completed our complaints process and decide whether there's enough information for the case to be considered, or indeed if it falls within the Ombudsman's jurisdiction. It has, I feel, improved the way things are done previously. An Ombudsman would go straight into an investigation stage, so I feel that it allows us the time to say actually that person has not completed our procedure, and the Ombudsman will immediately reject it. So of the 9 cases, 4 complaints were referred back to us for local resolution. For example, the complainant might not have exhausted the council policy. 2 complaints were closed after initial inquiries. That might be because the law says they're not allowed to investigate it. And 1 complaint was incomplete, invalid, meaning they didn't have enough information to proceed. So the 2 complaints were passed on for detailed investigation. 1 was not upheld after full investigation, and the second one was upheld with a recommended remedy of a formal apology, financial redress, and for the time and trouble taken, and for us to undertake a policy procedure review. The full anonymised report can be found in Appendix 3, page 47 of this report. The Ombudsman also gives us a report on our compliance with recommendations. In the reporting year, the 2 compliance outcomes, the Council satisfied the Ombudsman it had successfully implemented recommendations. However, both actions were completed outside of the time. And Appendix 4 gives further detail on that. And if I may, I'll give a highlight on that. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the timelines that we were given were not achievable. The detail is in Appendix 4. Relating to the second case, which was decided on the 28th of May, we were given a remedy target date. We did achieve that just a little bit later, but it was about processing of payments which caused that delay. Okay, so of some residual matters from 2020, a complaint was upheld which was reported to the committee last year. In terms of future developments, we are committed to continuous improvements and to learn from the complaints that we receive to improve service delivery and customer satisfaction. And to support that, we've taken some actions for the following year. So we're going to, our information governance team, led by our monitoring officer, will take complaints full ownership of the complaints process. It will ensure that timescales are adhered to and be enhanced by centralised monitoring. The complaints process will also be wholly digital, so it's supported via our customer portal. We are undertaking currently a Tell Us policy review, and that will be completed in this year. And we're also going to work with the Ombudsman by attending focus groups and workshops with with them, so they're trying to seek a unified code of practice with the Housing Ombudsman. One of the difficulties we do have is that they both have different timescales for us to provide responses to them. There are no implications in terms of resources, equalities or sustainability from this report. However, from a legal and risk implication, failure to manage our complaints will not only reduce opportunities to learn from the information, but also they could have a negative impact on our reputation and increase costs via compensation payments. The Tell Us policy review will help us reduce this risk. So therefore, the recommendations from this report are that the committee endorse the content of the Ombudsman annual review letter, and that they note the summary of complaints, inquiries and decisions made during 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've just got a couple of questions. Obviously, the year we've had, we can understand the report stating that timescales were affected for remedies and so forth. But what I would be interested to know is that when it comes to like investigating a complaint, and we are talking of decommissioning this building, and everybody's working from home now, what do you think is going to be the impact on investigating complaints? Are you still going to have that joined up, be able to have a conversation, get all the information you need in a timely manner, or do things need to change in that respect?
Thank you, Chair. The review of the Tell Us policy is actually addressing this. Our current policy states that we have 28 days to deal with a stage 1 complaint and 63 days for a stage 2. That doesn't fall in line with some of the recommendations from the Ombudsman. So we're looking to rectify that, but also with the implementation of the customer portal and the bringing all of the complaints to be managed by the information governance team, that's actually to support the new ways of working.
Okay, thanks. My next questions, if nobody minds me just getting mine out of the way. Just relating to Mr. S and his particular complaint. Just a couple of takeaways from that. First, we seem to engage with this person directly, and obviously I've only seen the anonymised report. I know nothing more about it than anybody else in this committee, but I mean, we did state in the report that we rebutted him back to his solicitor, but are we perhaps at fault for engaging with him a little too much, or did we only just kind of direct him back to his solicitor and have no further contact with him? Did we cause any delays by engaging too much with the person directly?
I think with this case was particularly difficult because we were undergoing a legal service review at the same time. So I think there was, because he contacted us a lot, we would then had to get to the point where we were only going through the solicitor. I don't think it caused any of the delays, that part of it. It was simply the legal services that caused a lot of the delay.
Right, that's fine. And just as a quick one on the remedy that was suggested, I mean, he wanted to claim his rent for the entire period. Was that something that was feasible? Would that be something that the Ombudsman would have said we had to do?
In the initial Ombudsman report, it was suggested. However, we did rebuke that because it wasn't appropriate that we should pay that in these circumstances.
Right, but it could have been.
It could have been something the Ombudsman would have suggested.
Right, okay. Any further questions, councillor people?
Thank you, Chair. Zoe, you made reference to the fact that the new policy is going to be overseen by the information team. One question I had from the ones that, if you like, didn't get all the way through the system was, are we going to make sure people have exhausted their local? Do we take steps to say, you know, thanks very much for your complaint, Mr. or Mrs. X. We have said no, or whatever it is. Do please note that you have this. Do we do that actively? Because it in a way it would make it less likely that people would end up going to the Ombudsman, I presume. So how do the people approach that, or will that be part of the new system to encourage people to properly sort it out?
Thank you, Councillor People. At the end of every response to a tell us, whether it be stage 1 or stage 2, there's a paragraph that states what their next stage of action will be. So at the end of stage 1, it's, if you're not happy with this response, then this is how you go to stage 2. At the end of a stage 2, this is how you contact the Ombudsman if you're not happy with this response. So they get the full details, totally transparent of what the next stage can be.
Thank you, Chair. That's good. You mentioned about it'll all be digital. Now, I'm just wondering whether that accords with our overall policy about access and equality. So I'm presuming there'd have to be something there that says it is 100% digital, except when, you know, someone would be disadvantaged by imposing that requirement. So will that be incorporated into the system?
Absolutely. We'll always have all channels open, but we're predominantly encouraging digital first.
I'm just concerned, Chair, when terms are used like it'll be 100% digital, and whilst I can understand that as like the norm, if that's the norm, I just think we've got to be careful, because in my experience of dealing with people who are vulnerable and marginal, they're the ones who are probably least likely to get all the IT right, or to not have access. So that was my, quality issue there, but only in terms of equal access to us. Apart from anything else, they're potentially the worst possible ones to end up with an ombudsman, because if the ombudsman says, well, you took no account of the fact that this person's blind or that they had some other disability, that straight away is us in the wrong corner, isn't it? So as long as we do that, I'd be grateful to know that's part of it.
Of course, all of our policies are fully impact assessed, so that will be part of the impact assessment.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when you look at our ombudsman report, I mean, as I noted earlier, that when they report it in percentages, it says 50% of the complaints were upheld. Well, that sounds awful, doesn't it? Of course, but it's out of 2, so so we're not doing too badly. But the fact that they do get to the ombudsman shows that something is working. If you look at it like that, in that they can get there if they want to. So yeah, hopefully that, you know, it looks good that the complaints are getting where they need to go.
I presume, Chair, that 1 or 2 a year is pretty good. I mean, for a size of authority. I mean, you couldn't compare us with a major city because of the numbers, but I'm presuming that 1 or 2 is actually comparably very good with our peer group. Would that be right?
Absolutely. I haven't normally in this report. I do some comparison data with other authorities, but because of the pandemic and everything being strange and the figures weren't going to reflect a true year. But next year, when the report's brought, it will reflect a true year.
Yeah, it wasn't a criticism, Chair. I was just asking for confirmation that seemed to me a pretty good overall result.
Yeah, it is. It is normal. So, you know, again, we're not getting complacent, but we know we're doing things right, I think. So, okay, we've had the recommendations as read out. So, looking for somebody to move. Pick on you, Councillor Thurgood. No, Councillor Greatrix put her hand up first. You second it? Okay, Councillor Greatrix to move, Councillor Thurgood to second, and we're all happy to move that. Yep, okay. Thank you, that's so moved, and I don't expect you to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't wish to. It's up to you whether you leave. Right, moving on then. And oh, thank you for coming. Thank you for your attendance, by the way. Sorry. The modern item 6, modern slavery statement 2021. Report of the Assistant Director of Partnerships, Joe Sands, and we have our portfolio holder as well, Councillor Stephen Doyle, with us. I presume for the same item. Welcome along.
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Chair. Members will remember that each year it's a requirement under Section 54 of the Modern Slavery Act to endorse and bring a modern slavery and human trafficking statement. And also Section 52 of the Act also imposes a duty on public authorities to notify the Secretary of State of suspected victims of slavery. So this annual statement is here for members to see. We've updated it slightly this year. We had some issues previously with the pandemic. This year we've actually included an update on the actions of 2021. You'll note there where we've actually indicated further actions that our procurement team actually undertake to actually prevent and actively ensure that there are no issues with our suppliers through the quotations and the tenders that we do. And I've also included this year in the training awareness. Members will see exactly what training staff have had at this point for safeguarding, of which modern slavery is included as a small module in that. And we've also still have now a bespoke e-learning modern slavery and human trafficking package for those staff that are frontline and may require some more updates and training. We also continue to work in partnership with both the police and other agencies to identify and seek if there are any issues that we actually come across with regards to modern slavery. That may include such things as visits to premises, whether that be a restaurant or whether that be a nail bar, and our officers, because of this training, can actively seek out and understand if there's anything that they may wish to bring as a concern. The referral route in, obviously if they have sufficient concern immediately they can report it to the national line, but we also have a route through our Tamworth Vulnerability Partnership through the community safety for people, so that agencies can discuss and understand what actions can be taken. There were no referrals this year through that process. Going forward, we will actually continue to seek reassurance via our current training packages that the staff remain up to date and have undergone relevant training. Identify and train safeguarding champions in each service, which is actually in progress. And completing that service now, we'll be working with service managers with our procurement team to undertake relevant risk assessments as necessary with suppliers to ensure their understanding and compliance with modern slavery, where they are also required to report through their turnover. These actions are all ongoing and are included as part of our wider community safety plans and safeguarding policies. So the recommendations of the report today is that the committee endorse the modern slavery and human trafficking statement for 2021, and then that can be then approved by Cabinet as our executive management, which is required through the Act in October, and obviously published on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and it's good to see expanded how we actually go about, raising the awareness and train staff regarding this as well as part of this. So, is anybody any questions, Councillor People?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I take the opportunity to commend the staff in housing who I've worked with on a number of occasions where they've been alert to possibilities of issues of modern slavery in its widest sense. I mean, it's the best way of putting it. And I've been very impressed by just how alert they were to these things. I'm also mindful that as an authority we're about to embark on a huge construction programme, and the construction industry has not always been completely free of the potential for trafficking or modern slavery. So I'm really pleased that we've got a very clear policy here that will then be applied to those who tender for what will be some very big, valuable contracts. And if the labour market is tight, and if materials markets are tight, then we don't want people exploited in order to achieve those targets. And I think it's really good that it's a statement that's as fresh as this, just as we embark on some very big spending programmes. And some of the people who'll be dealing with it will be big national suppliers. And, these things don't just happen in corners. These things happen with big suppliers who have got subcontractors who have subcontractors. So I think it's absolutely great that this statement is up front, just at the point where we're doing that. And I'd like to thank the officers for all the work, and for the procurement team for carrying it through, because it could be quite meaningless if we didn't check. And I think that's really important. So thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the report or the recommendations if you wish.
Okay, so
sorry, if you don't mind me doing so.
Yeah, I've done it now. So moved by Councillor People, but is anybody any further questions? Okay, I'm happy to second the report. Okay, right, in which case those recommendations, we'll just take a vote on that. Happy to pass that. Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. Again, if you don't wish to stay, I wouldn't expect you to. Thank you. Good night. Okay, just looking at the Audit and Governance Committee timetable for item 7. We are, just to advise, we are waiting on Mark Stocks to arrive from Grant Thornton. So I'm not trying to drag anything out, but he is on his way. Yeah, he's for the confidential part if we so vote to go into confidential. I mean, the timetable wise, pretty much a statement of fact, but we do, just as a reminder, have training on Teams on the 28th. So, which we agreed at the last meeting. So that's just a reminder, 28th on Teams. So we're happy we've noted the timetable. On to item 8 then, which is the management representation letter, and in Stefan's absence, I'm sure that we're in very capable hands of Lynn once again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. This letter, we are asking approval from this committee to authorise the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Executive Director of Finance and our Section 151 to sign the letter, ready to go off to our external auditors. The letter of representation is provided in connection with the audit of the financial statement for Tamworth Borough Council for the year ended 31st of March 2021, and is the purpose of expressing an opinion as to whether the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards, Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting in the United Kingdom, and all other applicable laws. Rather than go through the letter in detail, if I could just highlight a number of key sections from the letter. The first being that we confirm that we have fulfilled our responsibility for the preparation of the Council's financial statement in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards. We have complied with the requirements of statutory directions affecting the Council, and these matters have been appropriately reflected and disclosed in the financial statements. We are satisfied that where we've had to make material judgments in the preparation of financial statements, that these are soundly based and in accordance with the code and adequately disclosed in the financial statement. We are satisfied that the annual governance statement, commonly known as the AGS, fairly reflects the Council's risk assurance and governance framework, and we confirm that we are not aware of any significant risks that are not disclosed within the AGS. And finally, the narrative report discloses fairly and reflects our understanding of the Council's financial and operating performance over the period covered by the financial statement. As I said, we are asking for approval from this committee for this letter to be signed by yourself and Stefan. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council people?
Thanks, Lynn. Just to help me with it, just understanding, what international things do we have to now comply with? I mean, national, and I can understand. Obviously, we've got to follow government guidelines and how all councils present their accounts. But I noticed you said international. I just wonder what is it that's international about the way we have to report?
Thank you, Councillor People. There are a number of international financial reporting statements that we have to abide by. The latest one that is actually for inclusion in future years is around about leases and where we've taken them out, whether they should be included on our balance sheet. I think we're up to about number 16, are we, at the moment? Well, I'm just looking for Will for confirmation. So there are a number that, some of them won't obviously affect us whatsoever, but there are a number that do. I can get you a full list if you would like it.
No, I was just trying to understand how we. I mean, I presume our reporting requirements are driven by the UK, and I could imagine if we were in Lisbon or in Stranraer or something, we'd have to have similar standards. It's just, I was trying to work out. I mean, how do our leases compare with, I don't know, somebody in Paris or that? That's what I was trying to understand. But you've answered it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, anything to add or ask? Right. I'm not going to move it or second it because we're asking for me to sign it, and Stefan.
Happy for you to sign it, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll happily second it so that it's cross-party if you wish, Chair.
That's fine by me. So moved by Councillor Ford, seconded by Councillor People. All in favour of that? Yep. Okay, that's fine, and I'll get to signing that with Stefan when we can. Fantastic. And over to item 9, which is the fee increase letter. Popular. Report of our external auditors, Grant Thornton, and over to Will Guest to do the honours.
Thank you, Chair. So the fee letter sets out the expected, so it sets out the increased audit work for 2020, 2021, and also the expected audit fee for 2021. The increased fee was outlined and also sort of agreed with through the Redmond Review and MHCLG's subsequent response. to that, and the agreed fee for 2019-20, so last year's audit, was 52,750 for context. The reasons for the 2020-2021 increase are largely driven by the value for money work that has changed this year. So, as reported in our audit plan, there was some additional work that we needed to do, which was quite substantial, which sort of surrounded the governance, the financial sustainability, and also the economy, efficiency and effectiveness of the authority. In addition to the value for money work, there was also changes to auditing standards. So these auditing standards were ISO 540, so this covers estimates and the amount of work we have to do around the estimates made by management. There's also then ISO 240, which covers the fraud risk and the additional work we need to do around fraud in the authority and management override of controls. Then there's also some changes to Practice Note 10. Practice Note 10 also emphasises the additional work we need to do on estimates, as well as some additional going concern work that we need to do. In addition to that, there is also ISO 220, which goes on to the quality control of the financial statements and emphasises the additional sort of scepticism the engagement lead needs to have over the financial statements. On top of that, there is COVID-19, which has made audits take a lot longer generally, just due to the ways of remote working and the additional questions that we have had to ask and the additional challenge that has been put onto estimates. And also just to add that MHCRG granted £15 million of extra funding to cover these audit costs, and our audit fee increases in line with that. So therefore the proposed fee for 2020-2021 is 61,375. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody? Come on, councillor people.
It's just really to observe, Chair, that this is one of those classics, isn't it, where the government tells us they've given us more money to cover something in a sum of money which is actually less than that which we were given last year, because there is a reduction in the grant allocation. And they've already decided in advance that some of it is going to get spent on the auditing standards that they've requested. It's an unfunded mandate, but I mean it's small beer in the total package of stuff. But they're deciding how we need to be audited. They're saying they're giving us the money, and I've heard several council leaders over several generations saying they say they've rolled it up in our grant, but why is my grant smaller than it was before? So, but it's one of the smallest amounts that revolves around. I mean, if we get told to do weekly food waste collections, that'll add hundreds of thousands of pounds to the cost of authority, and that'll be something we really have to work hard over. Whereas this, I think, is largely taken care of.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. I mean, it is, dare I say it, a drop in the ocean, isn't it?
We have to look after the pounds,
Oh,
otherwise the thousands won't
rather-
get sorted, you know.
Got rather controversial last year in this committee with regards to this fee increase, but
Well,
you know.
As you said, I was subbing for Councillor Faulkner. I thought I better keep.
Oh no, it wasn't
keep,
Councillor Faulkner.
keep your mind on the pennies in order that the pounds add up.
Yeah, given the amount of work that goes on, I'm sure we can understand. So, I mean, if we're all happy with that, all we need to do is vote to endorse the letter. So I'm happy to move. Second, Councillor Greatrix. All in favour? There we go. Thank you. Right, but you're on next still, aren't you? Which is the audit findings report. This is part 1. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, can I start by offering apologies for Mark Stocks. Mark apologises for not being here, but he's got 2 committees this evening, so he'll join us as soon as he can. The audit findings report sets out our work for the 2021 financial statements audit, and please note that we've divided the report into 2 sections, which one will be taken in confidential later in this meeting. There are no material issues in the confidential section, but we have agreed that it should be taken privately to protect the commercial interests of the council. Mark Stocks will present this when he arrives later. So the audit findings report would normally include our findings on the value for money conclusion. This work is still ongoing and we'll report to you in December on those. If I could turn you to page 3 of the report. So I'm pleased to report that our audit is now complete and is only subject to the receipt of information from the pension fund auditor, comments from the committee, receipt of signed statements and the letter of representation. Subject to no issues arising from these matters, we are on target to issue an unqualified opinion by the end of September, which is in line with the deadline set by MHCLG. In our audit report, we will conclude that an emphasis of matter is required. This reflects the material uncertainty placed on valuation of the council's assets by its valuers. This reflects a difficulty in estimating the value of the assets due to COVID-19 and the impact that will have on future markets. This is not a qualification of the accounts, it just draws attention to this matter. The council has made one material adjustment to the financial statements, and this relates to a £1.87 million reduction in the pension liability following a reassessment by the council's actuary. These adjustments are common and reflect the information available to the actuary regarding the 31st of March 2021 pension liability. I'll now take you through the significant risks we identified in the other issues that we found during the audit. So please turn to page 7. Members will recollect that we identified a number of significant risks and where we have targeted our audited resources. The first of these is management override of controls. I'm pleased to report that we have not identified any issues to date with regard to journals, accounting policies or significant estimates. Please turn to page 8. So with regard to fraud in revenue recognition, we do not consider this to be a significant risk for Tamworth. Our testing has not changed our view on that. With regard to the valuation of land and buildings, we have now completed our work and we are satisfied that the material uncertainty placed on the valuation of assets is appropriate, and as mentioned, we will put an emphasis of matter in our opinion for that. On page 9, we discuss the pension assets and liabilities. We are satisfied overall with the council's estimate. As per my introduction, though, we have an adjustment has been made to the accounts of 1.8 million. We are also waiting for the pension fund auditor's letter to be received before we can conclude our work on that area. Now, I'll quickly take you through the other areas in the report and then hand back to the chair. So, page 10 sets out our work on IFRS 16 and grants. Our work is now completed on grants and there are no issues to report. The council has made some disclosure changes, though, with regard to IFRS 16. Page 11, this is the section that Mark will discuss in the private item later. Land and buildings, just to note really that the work is complete in this area and we are satisfied with the council's evidence. We did struggle to some extent with some of the evidence, and so we have made we've had discussions with management to improve that documentation for future years. Page 13 provides more detail on the pension estimate. Page 14 covers NNDR, so business rates appeals, and also the housing valuation. Our work in both areas is complete, and we are satisfied with the estimates. On the business rates appeals, we note that the council's provisions for appeals exceeds the appeals to date by 0.8 million. It's a difficult area to forecast based on the appeals data that the council received, and we do not consider that the council's estimate is unreasonable. If I can now move members to page 22 of the report, this sets out the changes in the financial statements, including the pension adjustment. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the separate disclosure on the face of the income and expenditure statement of COVID income and expenditure. So this is not strictly in accordance with the code, as this is not how it was reported in year. However, the officers consider that this better presents the council's finances. We draw attention to members, but we do not consider that it warrants qualification of our audit opinion. That concludes my presentation. Many thanks for listening. I'm open to taking any questions, but if there's anything I can't answer, I will note them for Mark when he arrives. Thank you.
Any questions?
I can ask, but I'm happy to wait for others first. With regard to the COVID income point, it seemed to me to be actually quite logical to sort, a bit like if a chain of stores, they report on like for like sales, because when in the days before COVID, they'd opened 10 new supermarkets. There was no point declaring it as though nothing had changed in the base. So I saw it as a kind of logical thing to have done. So I'm... That's all right. So I was interested that you felt you needed to say it's not actually how it is done, but I actually thought it was quite a reasonable point to do that, because in no other year will we have, well, one would hope in no other year, that, you know, we'd have so much income under that particular, is it section 31 or so, a grant, and therefore, you know, hopefully also not having to explain why we had everything shut as well. So I just thought it was good, and I'm glad that you've highlighted it's been done, but supported it by saying it's not a change that you feel you need to sort of stand and shout about as though somehow there's something untoward been happening. With regard to the NNDR, I have to say I'd rather see us over-provide at the moment, because even before COVID, there was all the appeals that were going on from the revaluation, and it struck me at the time that we had no real idea just how many things would happen. And now with COVID, presumably there's a disentangling needed between, you know, people appealing because they think their rates were wrong and people who are claiming rates back and all the rest of it. So I'm comfortable that at the moment we're over provided, because given the profile of income and expenditure going forward, we certainly wouldn't want a large negative to come into the pile. So I'm happy with that cautious approach, which is what I think that'd be fair. Would it say cautious approach to over provide it at the moment? Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, furlough in the last year gave people a lot of time to look at their outgoings, I suppose.
I was meaning more that there was supposed to be a bit of a hangover of people who would appeal against the new levels of NNDR, and the government had said we'd have to bear those appeal, the cost of that outcome, and then COVID came, so of course some businesses will sadly have gone under just because of COVID. Others will have were perhaps teetering on the brink anyway, and so how we get the NNDR back would be quite problematic, and that's why I'm glad to see that there's a reasonable over provision at the moment, cautious provision.
Okay, any more questions, comments? Right. I'm happy to move endorsing the report. Looking for a second. Councillor
second it if you like.
Got their hand up first. All in favour of that? Thank you, and thank you, Will. There's nothing for Mark to pick up on there, so who's just joined us. So right. So item 11 then is exclusion of the press and public for restricted part of the meeting. I've just got to ask a couple of questions on this, just sensitive to it. Is Grant Thornton's report public in any way, as in obtainable by a member of public in any case, regardless of this meeting being confidential, or is it presented to us as confidential at the present moment?
Good evening. So it's as confidential as any other paper that you take in private. So clearly people can try and do an FOI on it if they wish, but you know, there's commercial reasons for you not releasing it.
Okay, that's fine. And yeah, I just wanted to check, and as far as the commercial reasons are, without obviously trying to overstep into what is in this agenda item, it's definitely determined as a commercial arrangement.
In my view, yes.
Okay, as long as you're happy that it is, that's fine. I'm happy to move that then, that it's that we move to exclude press and public from the meeting at this point. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Greatorex, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll pause there for a little bit just to end the stream, and Adam will give us the go-ahead. Thank you for watching tonight.